Okay, were the COVID tests accurate? No, they were not. Was the death reporting accurate? Well, considering that one guy was listed as a COVID death who shot himself in the head with a shotgun, no, they were not. And then we have to say, okay, was the mask data accurate? No, we now know that they were not, especially in this case, one study in Bangladesh, which they point to, was based on self-reporting. So here, I want to do a segment on this because I feel like there's a lot of information. And sometimes you're too close to the forest, but I'm not going to mess up another expression. But you lose the bird's eye view. Masks, we've gone back and forth so much, and now we're talking about whether there will be new mask mandates. Yeah. Where the good news is we have a very large set of data now to work with. Mm-hmm. I know it's not a clinical trial, but again, you're not going to have the gold standard trial with them. What would be the placebo with a mask? Just a mask with holes in it, like it was Chris Cuomo's that he pinned up against his artboard? My point is, we have to kind of go by population studies, and we have the definitive answer. So as we face new mask mandates or potential lockdowns, and by the way, comment below, not if you'll do it, but if you think that we're at a point in this country where a majority of people won't, if you think most people will go along with it, or I tend to think we're at a point where there won't be enough people who will go along with it in the United 100%. States, which I think is a silver lining. People have learned. So how many times, though, with that being said, have you heard over the past few years, and we will go through the myths, the claims, all of it, references are available. You've heard them say that masks save lives. And in case you haven't heard it recently, because the science, or really just science, right? Not the science copyright. Science says that it's not correct. Here's a reminder of what it sounded like then.
The CDC is now recommending that people, including those vaccinated, go back to wearing masks indoors in regions of the country that are seeing substantial or high rates of COVID-19 spread.
The World Health Organization is urging fully vaccinated people to continue wearing masks as the Delta variant spreads worldwide.
Masks matter. These masks, they matter. It matters, it saves lives, it prevents the spread of the disease.
So if you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective. And that's the reason why you see people either double masking or doing a version of an N95.
Don't let COVID win. Wear a mask.
I love the science, right? Mr. Fauci there.
I'm such an idiot.
Just immediately making a logical leap. If the science shows that one condom helps, then two would just make sense. Never mind the friction would cause them to create micro tears.
I always wear 2 pair of underwear.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's better. 2 is more than 1.
Yeah.
And I prefer more than 1, which is 2.
Yeah, but if you wear 5, you'll suffocate and die. Problem solved.
Well, that's why you got to wear 6, because it's more than 5. And if 5 is good, then 6 is better.
Where does it stop?
Obviously, if 1 works, then 2 will work better. There was no evidence at that point for him to say it. None. And you dummies went along with it. Not you watching right now, but a good portion of this country. I hope you feel stupid. I really do. I get it. Like, we want to extend an olive branch, but you also sometimes have to rub their face in their piss. I really hope you feel dumb that you followed that guy, knowing what we know now.
You can rub their face in it all they want. They got 5 masks on.
Exactly.
They're going to mask.
6 is the magic number. We're past 5.
Hey, as we go into this, just really quickly, currently, right now, Lionsgate has a mask mandate that they just put back into effect for, I believe, their Santa Monica offices. Anybody that goes into the office has to have a mask. And a university in Atlanta basically said, we're going to mask for the next 2 weeks. There's no parties. Yeah, that's going to work on a college campus. No parties or large gatherings. And everybody has to go back to wearing a mask. So we're not talking like this is, again, Alex Jones was
it's happening with private companies, but again, that's just they're testing it.
Yeah.
They're testing it. And of course, what happens there just happens with private companies. Then it would extend to federal employees if they can get away with it. And then they want to see what they can do with the population. They don't want to overreach if they think that you'll push back enough, which is why you have to be as vocal as possible and fight like hell. Okay, what's the science? What science do we have on masks now? Well, let me just rapid fire this for you, and the references are available. Okay, key fact here, number 1. Masks, we now know, can actually, and by can, mean are actually poisonous. So here's a new study that came out here in the last couple of weeks. Researchers at Junebuk University, their K94, which by the way are very similar to the N95 masks, they were found to release high levels of volatile organic compounds. You've heard the term TVOC, right? So 8 times the recommended safety limit.
We think that sounds bad.
8 times is more than 7. But in this case, it's bad. So can we just round that down to 0? No, Fauci, you can't just manipulate it anymore. Wah!
But I'm also the math.
So these compounds, by the way, what kind of symptoms? Difficulty breathing, nervous system damage, organ damage, potentially cancer, just to be clear.
What?
All that being true, masks maybe should be appropriate for some folks. I need my hair done. Now, so think about this. 8 times the recommended safety limit. Now, here's the deal. This is the hypocrisy that you see. Or you know what? Not the hypocrisy. Everyone's a hypocrite. The mental loop-de-loops that people on the left would make. These are people, by the way, who will buy organic fruits because they don't want to ingest pesticides. I don't know if you know this, but by the way, organic foods that you buy at the grocery store, they can use pesticides. These are people who refuse to drink from plastic bottles because of the infinitesimal chance that they might consume some xenoestrogens or through the BPA, which could somehow disrupt their endocrine system, when inhaling directly 2 inches away, 8 times the recommended safety limit of volatile organic compounds. However, it's time to trust Dr. Fauci, commonly referred to as the science, also ASAP Pricky. Now,
it's science.
And by the way, we've lived it. This might actually explain. We had one employee when this happened. Remember, it was terrified. The one employee who refused to ever take off his mask. I thought he was on paternity leave.
Well, me too. He's up in that loft. Jeez.
Living life on his own terms. I like it.
You know how it smells.
Doesn't play by anyone's rules.
Well, I mean, Fauci's.
Yeah. Here's key fact number 2. Okay. Masks, we now know. Remember we did this in schools? They hurt children in a multitude of ways. Measurable ways. Quantifiable ways.
One of the ones that pisses me off the most.
Remember they would always say, hey, what harm is it? Oh, if we lock everything down, look, it's just a safety measure. At this point, err on the side of safety, as though there were no consequences, as though fundamentally altering our economy was not a consequence. Hey, look, err on the side of safety, right? So kids do their class by Zoom a little bit. How did masks hurt them? Well, lockdowns hurt them mentally, by the way. We've now seen record numbers of inhibited emotional development. Yeah. We've seen slower language development. Also, if kids wear the mask too long, they could end up looking like this. That's a problem that we deal with. Psychologically, we've seen increased anxiety. We've seen increased stress. We've also seen, by the way, children from these lockdown periods in masks, as they go into adulthood and into university, we've seen higher substance abuse. We've seen higher rates of mood disorders. By the way, to a statistical degree that couldn't be explained any other way. And when you add all of these together that follow the same trend, that's where you see a very clear causation. We also have very physical manifestations. Breathing discomfort that kids went through, skin disorders, headaches. These increased dramatically. These were reported. And now we have not just self-reporting, but we have studies looking at the entire population. We've collected the data. There's a trend across the board everywhere that masks were implemented. So when people say, oh, well, how does it hurt you? It hurts a lot of people in a lot of ways. It is not consequence-free.
Exactly. And so one of the videos that actually made me the most frustrated about this entire thing, because we knew that this was BS, right? And adults get to make an informed decision. You can go along with it. Wearing a mask wasn't the worst thing in the world, you thought, until we had some of this data come out, right, as an adult. But as a child, there were videos of kids who, you know this, like, don't want to wear a mask and they're too young to understand what you're trying to do. And so they just cry and cry and cry and try to rip it off and try to like instinctively, they're like, no, this is wrong. Yeah. And there's kids crying. And we knew as adults, they're at statistically 0 risk from COVID. Right. Statistically 0 chance of them dying from COVID. And yet we're masking them and forcing them to do this, and they're crying through the entire process. That really pissed me off, because if you're an adult and you want to make this decision, fine. But the kids, the innocent people, like, we're supposed to fight for them and protect them and say, no, this is not happening. Yeah. You can't do this because this kid is not.
You know what else it highlights? First off, I'm going to get to another fact that they don't even work. In case you think that all of this is worth it, it's not, because they don't even work. But parents need to fight for their. You know who was fighting against the children? You know who's fighting against children?
Teachers union.
Yep. The real heroes. You mispronounced it. Yeah, the real heroes.
Yes.
The teachers saying, if it were up to the teachers unions, they wouldn't be back today. They'd still be wearing masks, at least. I'm risking my life. I'm risking my life going in with a bunch of preschoolers if they're not double masking. Meanwhile, the kids don't learn how to read body language, facial expressions. They don't learn how to interact with humans. That's a huge component, right? Seeing a smile, seeing how someone is interacting with you. These are known facts, or at least they were up until the pandemic, where we said, what's the worst? Come on, it's consequence-free. It's just a mask. It's not just a mask, and it's about the control that the mask represents, and it's compounded by the fact that they don't even work, because here is key fact number 3. According to the Cochrane report,
The what?
I get it. I know. We are all children.
Cochrane, not ring. So
Right.
10 studies took place in the community, 2 studies in healthcare workers. Compared with wearing no mask in the community, studies only, wearing a mask may make a little to no difference in how many people caught a flu-like illness or COVID-like illness. We've had many studies too. This is another key point, according to Oxford epidemiologist Tom Jefferson, not the guy who,
Wait a second.
not Thomas.
I know,
Tom.
it's confusing.
He's an Oxford man?
Yeah, Tom Jefferson. There is just no evidence that they, meaning masks, make any difference, full stop, just to be clear.
Boom. Go read that article, by
And
the way.
here's something else, just to be clear. There was no difference between masking and not masking school districts. There was no statistical difference. The best that you can find is maybe, just to be clear, and you know what else didn't work? Social distancing like this. This is something we actually did, in case you've forgotten how stupid
My helicopter's here.
it become.
That's unbelievable.
And what the left is trying to say to you, right? They'll try and say, well, all these studies are population studies. You can tell people that they should wear a mask, but you don't know if these districts are wearing masks. So example, I think I'm going by rote here, there was a study in Peru where they would say, yeah, but we did see that the no masking districts either had better results or the differences were negligible, but we don't know if they were wearing masks or they weren't. Well, guess what? That also means that you don't know if the pro-mask community was wearing it or not. So all you know is when you study the population at large is at best, it is inconclusive data. But everything that we seem to know when we collect all of the data, right, when you have this preponderance of evidence, is that at best there is no difference. And we absolutely know the negative side effects that come with mask wearing, particularly with children, not to mention what they do to society as a whole. Now, the argument that they will try and make is, well, hold on a second, these are population studies, but in a lab setting, and I want you to watch this and then see if you can catch the stupid, because they think that this is a strong counter argument. In a lab in these perfect conditions, actually, a mask works. So you can't say that masks don't work in the population at large if everyone did this. Okay. So it shows there, and by the way, early on in the, I think it was Jocko was selling some like basic cotton masks. Where we said, hey, look, the one thing that a mask may do is if you are sick, you wear it. It might help prevent you spreading, and that still is true if you wear a mask. Now, as far as you being protected by a mask. So let's watch that again, and I want you to think of this as in a lab, right? It has been put on the face, absolutely sealed. I know this is showing how it's stopping particles from being propelled, but they also want you to believe, or at least still to this day, most people believe it also prevents you from inhaling particles. Right. So let's assume if this were in reverse that was the case, and then I'm going to change one variable. Watch it again.
God bless you.
Finally, somebody did.
By the way, some particles still go out, and it only takes one. It's like AIDS in the cereal box. Remember that, Fauci? So it's going out. No, they're starting with a mask. Okay, let me change one thing. You're in a room where other people have COVID and particles are out there. The mask has not been on your face the entire day without ever having been touched or removed. So let's say if at any point during that day, assuming, by the way, this is still a brand new mask, right? You're not reusing one. There are particles around. Oh, hold on. Let me scratch my nose. Particles are now on the inside of your mask, and you're inhaling them along with 8 times the legally permissible limit of volatile organic compounds. Just one. Pull it down. Guess what? Those particles are now on the mask.
Yeah.
Touch it. Oh, wait, now that's on the mask. Did you ever take it off? Did you ever reuse a mask? Let's be honest, Lou.
I know.
You had your mask stuffed into your glove compartment next to whatever other crap you put in there.
My pocket.
Yeah.
It looks like you ate a cheese enchilada through your mask.
Yes.
Sometimes. Listen, this is the point, and recently I had a conversation with my wife about this, but this is how I found out about it. She's a nurse, obviously. We talked about this. Nurses around the country should have stood up and said, whoa, hold on. That's not right.
Right.
We train specifically to make sure that we either use a mask properly or do not use a mask at all, because if you use a mask improperly, it's actually more dangerous than not having any protection at all.
Of course.
Right? Every single nurse in America should have been going, whoa, time out. We're telling people the wrong things. This is going to actually lead them to more harm because they're going to wear masks improperly and think they're safe, and they're not.
Well, those shitty TikToks weren't going to make themselves, Gerald.
with the dancing bodies, and I get it.
Oh my gosh, the true heroes. Yeah, go tell that to the guy who still has black lung because he was working at Ground Zero months after the towers fell.
Yeah. By the way, did you see that the CDC sent out like an alert saying, hey, masks won't work for smoke particles because they're too small? And they'll get through the masks when I think the COVID molecule particle is like 200 times smaller.
Well, I split the difference. I cut a hole in my mask for my cigar.
Perfect.
I've got one in my mask too, but it's a little bigger.
Unbelievable. Whoa!
It's for cheeseburgers.
That's the wall to your den. Now, and by the way, if you're watching, comment, did you ever buy this, the mask thing? And hit the like button because this will probably be clipped into a bit. This is as definitive as we can get. We want to go through, okay, is there harm? Yes. Do masks work? No. And now let's get to key fact here number 4. The studies that they tried to use to show that they worked were flawed.
Yeah.
Right? They were flawed from the get-go. So what they'll say is, hey, population studies don't really count. Let's look at masks in a lab. Well, we just went through that, right? Because that does not apply when we look at it across the board with population studies. However, when to make their argument, and by that I mean leftist communist bastards, they point yet again to another population study. Bangladesh. Okay? And this is you read this in Washington Post, by the way.
Trustworthy.
It says, villages where surgical masks were distributed appeared to be especially protected, an effect concentrated in the most vulnerable populations. We found that surgical masks averted 1 in 3 symptomatic infections among those aged 60 and older. Okay, so that went on in Washington Post. Problem, a reanalysis showed that the study had flaws. Here you go. Here's a reanalysis. It says, it would not be reasonable to conclude from this trial that there's a direct causal link between mask wearing and any causal claims. It is critical to consider that all of the outcomes in the study are based on self-reporting of symptoms. Meaning that doesn't even necessarily need to include a COVID test, which was also faulty. There's no point of entry here where you can make a definitive claim. You absolutely can if you study what is being inhaled from these masks.
That's
8
true.
times the permissible limit. But as far as any entry, okay, were the COVID tests accurate? No, they were not. Was the death reporting accurate? Well, considering that one guy was listed as a COVID death who shot himself in the head with a shotgun, no, they were not. And then we have to say, okay, was the mask data accurate? No, we now know that they were not, especially in this case, one study in Bangladesh, which they point to, was based on self-reporting. Why would you do that, and why would you point to that as your study while ignoring the other ones unless you were intentionally trying to be dishonest? Washington Post, I know, I'm asking a question I already know the answer to. Here's another quote. Our analysis of the population size shows that behavioral biases can produce a highly significant, a 9% difference between the control and intervention arm in the absence of any causal link with the intervention. In other words, you can't use population studies except for Bangladesh, which, by the way, is entirely self-reported. We didn't even effectively administer COVID tests, which also don't work. Tell me you're lying without tell me you're lying.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.